What truly controls the levers of our economy? Is it elected politicians or an independent central bank?
That's the big question right now, isn't it?
It really is. And right now, you are standing right in the center of this, well, intense battle over who sets the financial rules for our nation. The stakes just couldn't be higher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just this week, we saw a federal judge block President Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. This was over those mortgage fraud allegations, right?
That's right. The judge called the justification legally insufficient.
And that came like right after a Supreme Court administrative stay that could seriously weaken a 90-year-old precedent, the one protecting independent agency officials.
It's all happening very fast. You've got warnings from people like Ken Griffin, the billionaire GOP mega donor.
Yeah, he warned that messing with the Fed's independence risks, stoking both higher inflation and higher long-term rates.
But at the same time, President Trump is pushing really hard for lower interest rates.
He argues they'd boost the economy, make American debt cheaper.
It's definitely not just political drama. This stuff directly hits your wallet, your job, the whole U.S. economy's stability.
Okay, let's unpack this deep dive. It's all about this intense tug of war over the Federal Reserve's independence. We've got a stack of sources, articles, expert opinions, even some online chatter to help you cut through the noise.
Yeah, we want to help you understand the arguments, both for and against political control over the central bank.
Right.
And what's really fascinating here, is that while this debate isn't exactly new, it's definitely reached a boiling point lately. It challenges some really basic assumptions about how our economy is managed.
So our mission here is to give you the clearest possible picture of this power struggle, explore why different groups, especially on the conservative side, have such strong, sometimes conflicting views.
Exactly. And look at the potential consequences, economic and political, for all of us.
Okay, let's start with the argument for more political control. That's a view President Trump really champions, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He's been very vocal.
We've seen him actively criticize the Fed. What's his main approach been like?
Well, it's been pretty direct, very public. President Trump has, repeatedly attacked Fed Chair Jerome Powell on social media. He's called him slow, incompetent, even politically motivated.
And his main demand is
Real.
rates, right? Lower rates.
Yep, significant rate cuts. He genuinely believes that would boost the economy and make U.S. debt less expensive. He's also been really quick to claim his administration, quote, swiftly tamed Joe Biden's inflation crisis.
Suggesting the Fed should now cut rates to speed up growth.
That seems to be the argument, yeah.
So it's not just talk then. He's actively tried to influence the Fed's makeup, its leadership.
Yeah.
What about that attempt to remove Governor Lisa Cook?
Exactly. The push goes beyond words. On August 21st, 2025, Trump explicitly demanded Governor Cook's resignation.
And the reason cited was?
He cited deceitful and potentially criminal conduct. This was based on those unproven mortgage fraud allegations that Bill Pult, the FHFA director, publicized.
And that's a big deal because...
Well, it's crucial to understand this was actually the first attempted for-cause removal of a Fed governor in its entire 111-year history.
Wow. And for cause means you need proof of misconduct while in office, not just a policy disagreement.
Precisely. Not just alleged behavior from before appointment or because the president doesn't like their decisions.
That is a huge precedent to try and set. And he's also nominated people who kind of share this view of presidential power over the Fed.
Absolutely. He nominated Stephen Miron to a vacant board seat. Miron is known for openly arguing we should shorten governors' terms and make them dismissible by the president.
So these actions, they really show a consistent drive to reshape the Fed, don't they?
They do, and it lines up with a deeper strand of sort of conservative and libertarian thinking about the Fed.
Okay, so what are those core conservative and libertarian concerns driving this? What's the fundamental issue here?
Well, at its heart, many critics see the Fed as an accomplice in the crime of inflation. That's a phrase you hear. They argue the Fed kept interest rates too low for too long and essentially conjured money out of nothing. They believe this enabled massive government overspending and directly contributed to our current economic problems.
So it leads to this feeling of a lack of accountability.
Exactly. Many see the Fed as this unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy wielding immense power but not directly answering to voters. That fits right in with a small government free market philosophy.
Right.
And this isn't just abstract theory. You see it pop up in online discussions too. Some people express deep distrust, thinking the Fed manipulates the currency, the market, and the economy through monetary policy.
And that hurts ordinary people's savings through inflation.
That's the argument. For some libertarians, some MAGA supporters, it goes even deeper, a fundamental distrust of fiat money itself.
Yeah.
Currency not backed by gold or silver.
They see money printing as a kind of hidden tax.
Yeah, a hidden tax eroding savings. Think of Ron Paul. He's been a vocal advocate for years to just end the Fed entirely. He believes returning to a gold or silver-backed currency is the only real fix.
Those are definitely powerful arguments for more political oversight, but this raises a key question. While some conservatives want more control, other prominent conservative voices strongly defend the Fed's independence. They see it as vital. What are the main points?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Even within the conservative movement, there's this split. Take Ken Griffin, the billionaire GOP megadonor we mentioned.
Right, he wrote that op-ed recently.
He did on September 9th. And his warning was very clear. President Trump's attacks on the Fed carry steep costs. He explicitly said undermining independence risks, stoking both higher inflation and higher long-term rates.
Which hurts investor confidence, ultimately.
Right, and the broader economy.
So their main worry is economic stability. That without independence, politicians might make decisions that feel good now, but hurt us later.
Precisely. The core argument is that independence stops politicians from prioritizing, let's say, immediate voter satisfaction, like juicing the economy right before an election over the long-term health of the economy.
And history has warnings about that.
Oh, absolutely. Stark warnings. When a central bank becomes a, quote, political plaything, its currency often suffers. And sometimes the whole economy collapses. Think Weimar Republic, Argentina, Zimbabwe.
Yeah, those are chilling examples. Political interference leading to hyperinflation, economic disaster.
It's a reminder that the temptation for short-term political gain can lead to long-term economic pain.
That makes sense. And it makes you wonder how that temptation shows up today, especially when some conservatives talk about guarding against what they call social engineering. What's that about?
That's a really significant point. Jordan B. Rickards, who edits Conservative Opinion, wrote about this back on August 31st. He argued the Fed must stay independent, specifically to prevent what he called destructive economic theology from affecting monetary policy. He warns against the Fed taking cues from, in his words, leftist political passions. Things like lowering interest rates just to stimulate preferred industries, or maybe extending credit based on political fashion.
So he's worried about mission creep. The Fed taking on jobs beyond its basic economic role.
Exactly. He specifically calls out proposals like the Federal Reserve Racial and Economic Equity Act.
What would that do?
Well, the goal is to expand the Fed's mandate beyond just price stability and maximum employment, that's its traditional dual mandate, to include these broader social transformation goals.
Right.
Things like eliminating disparities in employment, income, wealth, and access to credit. Rickards sees this as social engineering through currency manipulation and imposing DEI policy on an institution that he believes should stick to economic basics.
And this isn't just a domestic worry, right? There are global ripple effects, too.
There are. The European Central Bank president, Christine Lagarde, actually expressed concern. She said a U.S. monetary policy driven by political whims would be very worrying globally. Just because the U.S. economy is so huge, its impact is worldwide.
Which brings us back to the courts, because the stakes are so high.
Precisely, and that's where it gets really interesting legally.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about legal fights that could rewrite decades of precedent. This whole debate over Fed independence is playing out right now in the courts, potentially redefining presidential power. Let's go back to Governor Lisa Cook's legal challenge.
Right. So as we said, President Trump cited those 2021 mortgage fraud allegations as cause to remove her. But on September 10th, U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb blocked that removal.
What was her reasoning?
She ruled it likely violated federal law and Cook's constitutional rights. She concluded that the for-cause protection in the Federal Reserve Act means misconduct while in office, not alleged stuff from before appointment. Plus, Cook wasn't given advance notice or a hearing, which Judge Cobb said violates her Fifth Amendment due process rights. And crucially, the judge explicitly stated that, quote, the public interest in Federal Reserve independence weighs in favor of Cook's reinstatement.
So that's round one for Fed independence, you could say.
Yeah.
But it's happening against this backdrop of, well, some pretty big shifts at the Supreme Court itself.
That's right. And that's maybe the more concerning long-term development. The Supreme Court has recently narrowed removal protections for some other agency heads.
Like what?
Well, in a really striking move on September 8th, Chief Justice John Roberts issued an administrative stay. This was a shadow docket ruling meaning, a quick decision outside the normal process, often without full arguments or explanation.
Okay, and what did it do?
It effectively allowed President Trump to fire the Federal Trade Commissioner, Rebecca Kelly Slaughter.
So with little explanation, the Supreme Court might be signaling a huge shift in how these independent agencies work.
That's how many legal observers are reading it. They see this shadow docket ruling as a strong hint that the justices might be ready to overturn a really critical 1935 precedent, Humphrey's Executor v. United States.
What did that case establish?
It upheld those for-cause protections for officials at independent agencies, basically said a president couldn't just fire them for disagreeing on policy.
And the implications for the Fed, if it's overturned.
They're immense. It could, quote, pave the way for a president to fire Federal Reserve Board members simply over policy disagreements. It would fundamentally gut the Fed's independence, allowing a president to reshape its leadership pretty much at will.
Wow.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these legal fights, these political battles, they also shine a light on deeper conservative concerns about the politicization of the Fed itself and the qualifications of the people appointed to it.
It's not just about presidential power versus independence in the abstract.
No, it's also about who is actually making these incredibly important economic decisions.
And a key example of that was the really intense scrutiny Lisa Cook faced over her qualifications when she was first nominated, right?
Absolutely. Back in 2022, Senator Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, argued very strongly that Cook was, in his words, grossly unqualified to serve on the Fed.
What was his reasoning?
He pointed to what he called her literally non-existent experience in monetary policy. He stated that not a single one of her publications concerns monetary economics.
And he worried about her stance on inflation.
Yes, he expressed concern she'd be an inflation dove, meaning less likely to raise interest rates to fight inflation. He felt she couldn't articulate a clear anti-inflation strategy during her nomination hearings.
So it wasn't just about her academic background, but also a concern about her policy leanings and how that might inject political bias or social agendas into the Fed's work.
That was definitely part of the argument. Toomey explicitly said Cook's history of extreme left-wing political advocacy and her support for things like race-based reparations would, quote, inject further political bias into the Fed's work. He argued it would distract from the main job of fighting inflation.
And this connects to that broader fear we talked about, mission creep.
Exactly. The fear among many conservatives is the Fed expanding its focus way beyond its dual mandate stable prices, maximum employment to include these social transformation goals like climate change or social justice.
Things they see as totally unrelated to the Fed's core expertise and purpose.
Right. For these critics, doing that politicizes a vital institution and makes it less effective at its main job.
Okay, so when we pull all this together, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive? It seems like the Fed's independence isn't some fixed concept, but more like a constant battleground, right? Long-term economic stability versus short-term political goals.
That sums it up well. And the outcome isn't just abstract policy. It really affects the architecture of economic power in our democracy. And it hits you through everything from mortgage rates to job security.
Right.
What we've seen is how interconnected all these pieces are, from presidential tweets to obscure legal cases, even to a nominee's PhD focus.
Yeah.
This isn't just a minor political spat. It's a fundamental reevaluation of who holds the economic reins.
Challenging assumptions we've maybe taken for granted for generations about how the economy should run.
Exactly. So as the Federal Reserve's traditional role gets challenged and its independence is really put to the test, here's something to think about. What happens to the stability, the trustworthiness of our entire financial system when the very institution designed to be apolitical becomes a central battlefield in our nation's political wars?